Hello and welcome to Macabre Histories. We are so glad you found this channel. Before we descend into the humid shadows of the Louisiana bayou, if you enjoy these explorations of the darkness that history tries to forget, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell. It truly helps us continue to unearth these unsettling narratives. Tonight we look not at a place, but at a man whose name was scrubbed from the ledgers and whose parish was swallowed by the swamp. A man history itself deemed too foul to remember, Father Abel Duval. Elias Thorne fancied himself a man of the new age. It was 1888, and the world was alight with electricity, industry, and the power of the printed word. He was a reporter for the New York Herald, a man who dealt in facts, figures, and the observable truth. He had exposed fraudulent spiritualists in Manhattan parlors and debunked miracle tonics in Brooklyn. So when his editor, Mr. Abernathy, called him in regarding a letter from the Deep South, Elias was, to use the parlance of the day, feeling his oats. The letter was penned on damp, flimsy paper, the ink spidering from the humidity. It spoke of a small, isolated parish, Paroisse Saint-Broum, Saint-Mist Parish, located somewhere in the wetland labyrinth between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. It spoke of a priest, Father Abel Duval, who was performing wonders that bordered on the divine. The letter, however, was not from a believer. It was from a desperate, anonymous source, claiming the priest was not a savior, but a thief of souls. Thief of souls, Elias scoffed, adjusting his waistcoat. Sounds like penny dreadful nonsense, Abernathy. What's the real angle? Is he extorting the locals, running a confidence scheme on the cotton barons? Abernathy leaned back. That's what I'm sending you to find out, Thorne. The man who delivered this letter looked unwell. He claimed Duval, aged 46, holds the entire parish in his sway. Not just fear, Thorne, devotion. The kind that makes people hand over their deeds, their savings, their free will. Go down there. Spend a week. Write us a scathing expose on religious fervor in the bayou. Make it colorful. The readers love colorful. Elias packed his finest linen suits, which he would soon learn were useless, his notepad, and his unshakable skepticism. He took the train south, the rattle of the tracks a rhythm of progress. But as the manicured fields of the north gave way to the dense, dripping greenery of the south, the progress seemed to slow, then stop. He arrived in New Orleans, a city that felt more like a foreign port than a part of his own country, a dizzying mix of French, Spanish, and African sounds and smells. He hired a local guide, a taciturn Creole man named Bastien, who agreed to take him by boat to the mouth of the bayou that led to Saint-Broum. Bastien's only advice, offered as they boarded the flat-bottomed skiff, was, "You watch dat priest, monsieur. He don't take, he trade." Elias just nodded, jotting the cryptic phrase in his book. The trip into the swamp was a descent. The cypress trees, draped in Spanish moss, looked like grieving giants. The water, the color of strong tea, was unnervingly still. The air was not air, it was a physical weight, thick with the scent of damp earth, decay, and jasmine. After 6 hours, the waterway opened into a dark lagoon. On a mound of earth, barely rising above the waterline, sat the parish of Saint-Broum. It was not a town, it was a wound. A collection of sinking shacks, a general store, and at the center, a surprisingly large, surprisingly well-kept wooden church, its steeple piercing the oppressive humidity. Elias Thorne stepped onto the muddy bank, his leather shoes immediately sullied. The silence was absolute, broken only by the buzz of insects. He was being watched. From every shaded window, from the dark spaces beneath the raised houses, eyes followed the new man. Elias secured a room above the general store, which was run by a man so pale and gaunt he looked as if he'd been bleached. The reporter spent his first day attempting to engage the locals. It was fruitless. They were polite, in a strained, vacant way. When he mentioned Father Duval, they would either nod and say, "The father is a good man," or they would simply turn away, making the sign of the cross. They were a people living in a shared trance. Their skin had a sallow, damp quality, yet the church grounds were meticulously maintained. The women swept the cypress needle paths, and the men poled barges of goods to the church steps, offerings for their silent savior. Sunday, Elias decided, would be the day. He would see the man himself. He put on his best suit, the humidity already causing his starched collar to wilt, and walked the path to the church. The bell tolled, a dull, heavy sound that didn't ring so much as thud against the air. The church was packed. It was suffocatingly hot, the air thick with the smell of beeswax, mildew, and an unidentifiable sweet incense that made Elias's head swim. The parishioners sat rigid in the pews. And then he appeared. Father Abel Duval. He was not the gaunt, wild-eyed fanatic Elias had expected. At 46, Duval was a formidable presence. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a high, intelligent forehead and deep-set eyes that seemed to absorb all the light in the room. He wore simple vestments, yet he carried himself with the bearing of a king. He didn't walk to the pulpit. He commanded the space. He began to speak. His voice was not the fiery boom of a revivalist. It was a deep, melodic baritone, a resonant calm that cut through the humidity. He spoke in a mixture of English and Louisiana French, his words washing over the congregation. He didn't speak of fire and brimstone. He spoke of burdens. "You carry too much," he said, his gaze sweeping the crowd, seeming to land on every individual, including Elias. The heat, the damp, the sickness in the bones, the grief in the heart. You carry it until your back bends and your soul cracks. He paused, letting the silence stretch. The Lord does not ask you to carry it. He asks you to give it to me. Elias watched, fascinated and repulsed. Duval walked down from the pulpit, moving among the pews. He stopped at a woman who was weeping silently, her body racked with tremors. He placed a hand on her head. "Your sorrow for your departed husband, madame. It is a heavy stone. Let it go." The woman gasped, her body going rigid. Then a visible change occurred. The tension left her. Her weeping stopped. She looked up, her eyes wide, but utterly, terrifyingly empty. She smiled, a simple, placid smile, and sat back in the pew. Duval moved on. He cured a man's hacking cough, which simply vanished. He eased the worry of a farmer whose crops were failing. With every miracle, the congregation seemed to grow lighter, more joyful, while Duval himself seemed to swell, to grow darker, more vibrant. Elias scribbled furiously in his notepad. Mass hypnosis, coercive suggestion, the power of ritual in an isolated community. He's a magnificent charlatan. But then, Father Duval stopped directly at Elias's pew. The reporter looked up into the priest's eyes. They were not fanatic's eyes. They were cold, intelligent, and ancient. "And you, monsieur?" Duval murmured, his voice barely audible, yet clear as a bell. "You carry the heaviest burden of all, the burden of doubt. It is a poison. You must be cleansed of it." Elias Thorne, the New York skeptic, felt a jolt of genuine, cold dread. The priest smiled, a thin, humorless expression. "Welcome to Saint Broom. I do hope you find what you are looking for." Elias left the church feeling as though he'd been submerged in the bayou water, his clothes and his certainty equally soaked. The cured woman, Madame Benoit, was now outside, calmly stacking firewood, her face devoid of the profound grief he'd seen just minutes earlier. It was not peace, it was absence. He needed an antidote to Duval's oppressive sanctity. He needed an outside perspective. Bastien, his guide, had refused to stay in the parish, mooring his skiff a mile downriver. Elias slogged through the sucking mud of the swamp's edge to find him. Bastien was cleaning a catfish, his face set. "You saw him, Den," Bastien stated. It wasn't a question. "I saw a very effective performance," Elias countered, trying to regain his professional footing. "He's a master of psychology. He's preying on their desperation." Bastien stopped cleaning the fish. "You think he prey?" "No. He is a merchant, monsieur. These people, they are poor. They have nothing to give, except what's inside. So that is what he takes. He takes the ache from their bones. He takes the sadness from their heads. And he gives them noting. He gives them the empty." "But how?" Elias pressed. "That incense, some local herb that dulls the mind." Bastien shook his head. "You are a man of the city. You look for the trick. There is no trick. There is only the swamp, and there is the bon Dieu." Duval. He found a way to serve them both. Bastian motioned with his knife toward a narrow inlet, almost invisible among the cypress roots. You want answers? You don't talk to the empty ones in the church. You go see Maman Cécile. She is the traiteuse, the healer. She was here before Duval. She will be here after. Elias paid Bastian to take him. The journey was short, but it felt like traversing a different world. The inlet was a dark tunnel of roots and moss. It opened into a small hidden lagoon, where a single shack stood on high stilts, a garden of strange, vibrant flowers blooming in pots on its porch. As they approached, an old woman emerged. She was small and wrinkled, her skin the color of dark walnut. She wore a simple tignon head wrap and smoked a clay pipe, the smoke warding off the insects. This was Maman Cécile. She watched Elias with bright, sharp eyes. You come from the church, she said, her voice like dry leaves. You smell of him. That false incense. Elias introduced himself, explaining his purpose. He expected suspicion, but she just nodded, as if his arrival were inevitable. He is a hollow man, Cécile said, gesturing to a stool, a priest who tore the pages of his own Bible to make room for older words. What older words? Elias asked. The words the swamp knows, she said, looking out at the dark water. This place is old, Cher. The ground here, it is hungry. It wants to take. It wants to pull everything down into the mud. The people who lived here before us, they knew this. They made agreements. They gave offerings, small things to keep the balance. And Duval? He came, Maman Cécile continued, her voice low. He was a missionary, they said, sent to save the heathens. But the swamp, it spoke to him. It offered him a bargain. He saw the misery of the people, the sickness, the fear. A good priest would pray. A good priest would comfort. This one saw an opportunity. He saw all that pain, all that misère, and he learned to, how you say, harvest it. He takes it, Elias said, remembering Bastian's words. He takes it, Cécile affirmed, and the people are grateful. They feel light, they feel cured. But a thing that is taken must be put somewhere. A burden cannot simply vanish, monsieur. It must be carried. Who carries it? Elias asked. Maman Cécile pointed with the stem of her pipe, not at the church, but at the dark, looming cypress forest surrounding the lagoon. The swamp, Cher. The swamp carries it all. And Father Duval, he is just the delivery man. Elias needed tangible proof, something more concrete than the cryptic warnings of an old swamp healer. His reporter's instincts told him to follow the miracles. He focused on the man whose cough Duval had cured in the church. His name, he learned, was Jean-Paul Landry. He had been a trapper, known for a boisterous laugh and a love of pecan brandy. He had also been suffering from a wasting lung ailment for months, a persistent wet cough that had left him bedridden. Elias found Jean-Paul not at his own shack, which sat empty and neglected, but on the church grounds, hauling buckets of mud from the lagoon's edge to reinforce the church's sinking foundation. The man was working with a furious, mindless energy. His breathing was perfectly clear. The rattling cough was gone, but so was everything else. Mr. Landry? Elias approached him. Jean-Paul didn't look up. He just continued his work. Scoop, lift, haul, dump. Scoop, lift, haul, dump. His shoulders were broad, his arms powerful, but his eyes were as flat and gray as the mud he carried. Jean-Paul, my name is Elias Thorne. I'm a reporter. I saw what Father Duval did for you in the church. Your cough, it's gone. It's a remarkable recovery. The man paused for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Elias to register the interruption. He turned his head. There was no recognition, no anger, no curiosity. The Father is good, he stated, his voice a monotone rasp. The foundation must be strong. But your family, your wife, she must be overjoyed. The Father is good. The foundation must be strong. What did he ask of you, Jean-Paul? What did you have to give him in exchange for this health? Jean-Paul dropped his bucket. He turned fully to Elias, and for a moment, the reporter saw a flicker of something behind the emptiness, a profound, agonizing terror. It was the look of a man trapped behind a wall of glass. The man's mouth opened, but no sound came out. his hands clenched and unclenched. Then, as quickly as it came, the flicker was gone. The placid emptiness returned. The foundation must be strong, he repeated. He picked up his bucket and returned to the lagoon. Elias was profoundly shaken. This was not a cure. This was an eviction. Jean-Paul was still inside, but he was no longer in control. He was a prisoner in his own healthy body, forced to watch as a mindless automaton performed manual labor for the priest. That evening, Elias returned to Maman Cécile, his skepticism badly damaged. "It's worse than I thought," he told her, his voice low. "He doesn't just empty them. He uses them. Jean-Paul is a slave." "He is an anchor," Cécile corrected him grimly. "When Duval took the sickness from his lungs, he had to put it somewhere. He gave it to de Swamp, but de Swamp demands a price for such a large gift. The sickness is gone, but Jean-Paul's will is now bound to that church. He is part of the foundation himself. He keeps the bargain." "How many?" Elias asked, dread pooling in his stomach. "How many miracles like this?" Cécile looked toward the church, where lanterns were being lit. "Count the ones who work and do not speak. Count the women who weave and do not sing. Count the men who pole the boats and do not laugh. Duval has been here for 5 years, monsieur. His congregation, it is very, very healthy." To understand Duval, Elias realized he had to understand the Paroisse Saint-Brûme. It was a place that defied geography. The land was an illusion, a temporary truce between the silt of the Mississippi and the encroaching Gulf. Everything was in a state of perpetual, slow-motion sinking. The houses were built on stilts, but the stilts rotted. The wooden walkways connecting the shacks were slick with algae. The entire parish was slowly being reclaimed, except for the church. This was the detail that gnawed at Elias. While the rest of the parish succumbed to the inevitable, the church stood firm. It was built on the highest point of land, a small cheniere, or ridge of ancient shell and sand. But even so, it should have been sinking. Jean-Paul and the other cured men were constantly shoring it up with mud and cypress logs. It was a battle against gravity and time, and somehow the church was winning. Elias spent a day walking the perimeter. The air was thick with the metallic tang of swamp gas. The Spanish moss, he noted, did not grow on the trees nearest the church. It stopped at a distinct line, as if repelled by an invisible fence. The water in the lagoon surrounding the church was different too. Elsewhere it was tea-colored but alive with frogs and fish. Here it was black, still and oily. Nothing broke its surface. He felt the oppression not just as a mood, but as a physical pressure. The milieu itself was sick. He was a man of science, but the longer he stayed, the more he felt the cold, empirical world of New York dissolving. Here, belief was a force of nature. The belief of the parishioners in Duval was so potent, it seemed to be holding back the swamp. Or, Elias theorized, Duval's bargain was a two-way street. He fed the swamp the people's sorrows, and in return, the swamp, what? Respected his territory? He ventured into the presbytery, the priest's house, which was connected to the church by a covered walkway. He found it unlocked. The front room was simple: a desk, a crucifix, a Bible. But the air was cold. Not cool, but a dead, artificial cold, despite the suffocating heat outside. On the desk, Elias found a ledger. It was not for money. It listed names: Jean-Paul Landry, Eliane Benoit, François Tissot. Next to each name was not a dollar amount, but a single word: lungs, grief, fear. He was documenting his transactions. A noise from the back room startled him. He moved slowly, pushing open the door. It was a study, but it looked more like a botanist's laboratory. Jars lined the shelves, filled with dark water and samples of swamp flora, algae, roots, mud. But the centerpiece was a large, shallow wooden basin on a table. Inside it was a perfect miniature replica of the parish, sculpted from mud, twigs, and shells. There was the general store, the shacks, and the church, made from a single carved piece of cypress. He leaned closer. In the mud surrounding the miniature church were dozens of tiny figures, carved from root knots, each one bound with thread. They were arranged in a circle, facing the church, their backs to the miniature swamp. It was a map. It was a threat. He is an artist, is he not? Elias spun around. Father Abel Duval was standing in the doorway, filling it completely. He was not angry. He was smiling, that same thin, proprietary smile from the church. An architect of the soul, perhaps. Duval continued, walking into the room. He was 46, but in this moment, he looked timeless. You see, Mr. Thorne, you believe the world is made of facts, but the world is made of will. And in a place this soft, this pliable, a strong will can reshape reality. What is this? Elias demanded, gesturing to the model. A tithe, Duval said simply. A record. The people give what they can, and I give it to a higher authority. An authority much older and much closer than the one in Rome. He picked up one of the tiny bound figures. This is Mr. Landry. He is anchored. He is free of his ailment, and in return, he helps anchor the church. A fair exchange. Would you not agree? You've enslaved them, Elias said, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and rage. Enslaved? Duval raised an eyebrow. I have liberated them. I have taken their pain. What is the self, Mr. Thorne? A collection of miseries and fears? I have taken those. They are light. They are purposeful. They serve God. And I serve the land. And the land serves me. Duval did not eject Elias from the presbytery. He simply walked out, leaving the reporter alone with the chilling model. The message was clear. I have nothing to hide from you, insect. Elias realized that Duval's confidence was absolute. He wasn't afraid of a New York reporter because, in Saint-Brome, Duval's will was the law. The facts Elias gathered were meaningless here. Shaken, Elias retreated to the general store. He needed to understand the enforcement side of the parish. Duval was the mind, but he had to have hands. He found them that evening. They called themselves the Frères de la Croix, the Brothers of the Cross. They were 4 large, silent men, all of them cured by Duval. Their leader was the man whose fear was listed in Duval's ledger, François Tissot. Tissot had allegedly been a coward, a man terrified of the swamp, of the night, of his own shadow. Now he was the walking embodiment of cold, mindless resolve. The Frères did not carry weapons. They didn't need to. They were the parish police, the deacons, and the work crew foreman all in one. They moved with a slow, ponderous certainty, their eyes as vacant as Jean-Paul's. They ensured the tithes were collected, that the work was done, and that dissent was handled. Elias was sitting on the porch of the store, trying to write his notes, when the 4 Frères approached. They didn't walk so much as drift through the twilight mist, their boots making no sound on the damp boardwalk. They stood in a semicircle around him, blocking his path. The smell of the Black Lagoon water rolled off them. You speak with Maman Cécile, Tissot stated. His voice was a dead rumble. I speak with many people. I'm a reporter, Elias said, his hand tightening around his pen. She is Grise, bad magic, Tissot said. She upsets the balance. The father, he does not like the balance to be upset. The father doesn't seem to like much of anything, Elias retorted, except his own power. Tissot stared at him. There was no anger. There was no emotion at all. It was like being chastised by a walking corpse. The father takes our burdens, Tissot said. Before him, there was only fear. Now, there is only work. Work is good. You bring the fear back. You are a burden. Are you threatening me, Mr. Tissot? Tissot slowly shook his head. We do not make threats. The father asks us to collect. You have a burden, monsieur, the burden of doubt. The father wants to cleanse you of it. He has invited you to the Fête de la Nuit, the night festival. Tomorrow, you will come. And if I refuse? No one refuses, Tissot said. He reached out a massive mud-caked hand and placed it on Elias's shoulder. The reporter flinched. The man's hand was impossibly, horribly cold as the presbytery. It was the cold of the deep mud. He will see you tomorrow. He will make you clean. The 4 men turned as one and drifted back into the mist, leaving Elias alone, his shoulder aching from the cold touch. He understood. Duval wasn't just offering a cure, he was enforcing it. Anyone who held on to their pain, their grief, or their skepticism was a threat to his system. And Elias Thorne was the biggest threat of all. Elias was trapped. He knew he couldn't get to Bastien's skiff without the Frere intercepting him. He was a prisoner in a town with no bars. His only ally was Maman Cécile. He waited until the moon was high, a sickly yellow disk behind the haze, and slipped out of the general store, avoiding the main paths. He moved through the swamp, hip-deep in water at times, fighting the sucking mud, until he saw the dim light of her shack. She was waiting for him, as he knew she would be. A pot of a bitter black brew was simmering. "They invited you to defect," she said. "They invited me," Elias said, pulling a leech from his ankle with a grimace. "Tissot and his collectors. What is this festival, Cécile? What is he planning?" "He has done this before," she said, handing him a cup of the brew. "Twice, once for a traveling preacher who called him a heretic, once for a taxman from New Orleans. Neither one left Saint-Broum. What did he do to them?" "He cleansed them," she said, sitting opposite him. "You see, de swamp, it is a greedy ting. Duval feeds it to small pains, to coughs, to sadnesses, and de swamp is happy. It gives him the power to keep his church from sinking. It gives him the control. But sometimes de swamp wants more. It wants a feast, a strong will, a complex soul, full of fire and doubt and life. This is what Duval offers it at the fete." Elias felt the bitter coffee turn to ice in his stomach. "He's going to offer me. He will cleanse you, cher," Cécile explained, her voice urgent. "He will take your skepticism, your education, your New York, all the things that make you you. He will take it all and cast it into de lagoon, a gift to his dark master. And what is left of you will be just like Jean-Paul, an odor strong back to Hall de Mud, an odor anchor for his church. We have to stop him," Elias said, his mind racing. "The authorities, New Orleans, they will not come," Cécile said flatly. "They are happy to let this swamp have Saint-Broum. No, we must stop him. You cannot fight his brothers. They feel no pain. You cannot argue with Duval. His words are stronger than yours here. You must break the bargain." "How? How do I break a bargain with the mud?" Maman Cécile stood up and went to a small table. She pulled back a cloth. Underneath was a collection of objects: dried herbs, alligator teeth, bundles of feathers, and in the center, a crude small doll made of gray clay and Spanish moss. "The presbytery," Elias whispered. "The model of the parish. He has figures like this. He called them anchors. He binds their will to the church," Cécile said. "He is a priest. He knows the power of symbols. He makes an effigy of the parish, and what he does to the model, he does to the people. But his power, it is also bound. He binds the people to the church, but he is bound to that model. It is his anchor. It is where he focuses his will. If we destroy the model, you break the links," Cécile said, her eyes bright with a dangerous light. "You cut the chains. The swamp will have been promised a feast. You. If Duval cannot deliver, it will take the next best thing. Duval," Elias finished. "He has taken the souls of his flock," Maman Cécile said, her face hard. "It is time for them to have their burdens back." Elias felt a surge of hope, the first since he'd arrived. But Cécile held up a hand. "It is not so simple. The presbytery will be guarded. The frère will be at his side. You cannot just walk in. You must go during the fête. He will be occupied with me," Elias said grimly. "No," she said. "He will be occupied with the ritual. You are the guest of honor, but you are not the main course. He must prepare. He must summon his authority. That is when you must act." "You're asking me to walk into his festival willingly? You have no choice. But you will not be alone." She handed him a small woven pouch. "This contains salt and the feather of the hawk. It will not stop them, but it will confuse their senses. They are empty. They are easy to misdirect. It will buy you time. You must get to the presbytery. You must find that model, and you must break it." As Elias was about to leave, he hesitated. "Cécile, the letter that brought me here. It spoke of a thief of souls, but it felt personal. It wasn't about the parish. It was about one person." Cécile's face softened, the hard resolve replaced by a deep ancient sadness. "The letter," she sighed. "It was from me. I sent it with the last man who tried to leave. I could not write, but I told him what to say." "Why?" "Because of Elodie," she whispered. "My granddaughter." Elias's blood ran cold. "What happened to Elodie?" "She was bright," Cécile said, looking away, her voice thick. "She loved the music from New Orleans. She wanted to live. She was not like the others, content to fade. She fell in love with a young trapper. But Duval, he wanted her. Not for himself. He wanted it brightness. He wanted her joy. He told her to love was a sin, a burden. He offered to cleanse her of it. And she accepted. She refused," Cécile said, a tear tracing a path through the wrinkles on her cheek. "She defied him, publicly. She said her love was a gift from God, not a burden. So, he took her. De Frère, they brought her to him. And he performed a ritual. He took her joy, her love, her fire, and he gave it to the swamp. But she was too strong. She did not become empty, like Jean-Paul. She just stopped. She lies in her shack. She does not speak. She does not move. She just is. He did not just take her soul. He broke it." Elias finally understood the true nature of the evil he was facing. It was not just coercion. It was not just theft. It was the jealous, petty destruction of anything Duval himself could not possess. It was the act of a man who, unable to feel the light, sought to extinguish it in others. "I will not fail," Elias said, his voice hard. "Tonight, this ends." The festival began as the last light of the sun was devoured by the swamp. The mist rose from the black lagoon, thicker than Elias had ever seen it, glowing with a faint phosphorescent green. The parishioners, all of them, the cured and the uncured alike, emerged from their shacks. They were dressed in simple white garments. They carried no torches. They moved in silence toward a clearing behind the church, a natural amphitheater ringed by massive ancient cypress trees. Elias, his heart pounding a rhythm against his ribs, joined the procession. Tissot and another of the frères flanked him, their cold presence a constant reminder. They guided him to the center of the clearing, where a single crude stone altar stood. And there, waiting, was Father Abel Duval. He too was in white, but his vestments were embroidered with complex, swirling patterns that seemed to mimic the cypress roots. He looked magnificent. He looked energized. The oppressive humidity seemed to part for him. "Mr. Thorne," Duval announced, his voice resonating through the clearing. "You have come to be healed. You have come to lay down your terrible burden of truth and to accept the peace of service." The cured parishioners, Jean-Paul, Madame Benoit, and dozens of others, formed a tight inner circle, their eyes vacant, their hands linked. They began to chant, a low, monotonic hum that seemed to vibrate in Elias's bones. The air grew colder. The green mist from the lagoon swirled around them, coalescing around Duval. "You see," Duval said, speaking only to Elias now, "they are grateful, they are free. And you will be the most grateful of all. Your mind is so loud, so full of questions. Imagine the peace, imagine the quiet." He raised his hands. "We begin. We offer this knot, this tangle of doubt, to the deep ground that holds us. We offer this wandering soul. In exchange for the health of the Paroisse Saint-Brûme." Tissot and the other frère took Elias by the arms, their grips like iron clamps. They began to force him toward the stone altar. This was it. Elias fumbled for the pouch Maman Cécile had given him. He tore it open and threw the contents, the salt and the hawk feather, directly into the faces of the two frères. The effect was instantaneous and bizarre. The men did not cry out in pain. They simply stopped. Their empty eyes registered a conflict. Salt, purity, grease, hawk, air, sky. It was sensory information they could not process. Their programming was broken. Tissot released his grip, his head tilting, a look of profound confusion on his face. "No!" Duval roared, his composure breaking for the first time. The green mist around him recoiled. Elias didn't hesitate. He broke free and bolted, not toward the swamp, but directly toward the presbytery. "Stop him!" Duval shrieked. "Stop him!" The friars and the other cured parishioners turned to obey, but they were disjointed. Their anchor, Duval, was enraged, and his commands were overlapping. Their simple, direct purpose was gone, replaced by chaos. They stumbled, they bumped into each other, their mindless obedience shattered by their master's panic. Elias ran faster than he ever had in his life. He burst through the door of the presbytery, the cold air hitting him like a wall. He ran to the back study. There it was, the model, the miniature parish, glowing faintly in the dark. Elias grabbed the model. He had intended to smash it on the floor, but as his hands closed on it, a profound, sickening energy jolted through him. He gasped. It was not just mud and twigs. It felt alive. It was warm, and it seemed to throb with a slow, faint pulse. He could hear, faint as a whisper, the voices of the cured. The foundation must be strong. The Father is good. He realized with horror that Cecile was wrong. This wasn't just a symbol of the bargain. This was the nexus of it. Smashing it might not free them. It might destroy them. He heard Tissot's heavy footsteps outside the presbytery. He was out of time. He looked frantically around the room, and his eyes landed on a heavy ringed pull handle on the floor, hidden under a bearskin rug. A cellar. He yanked it open. A wave of stench rolled out, the smell of the black lagoon, of decay, and of ozone. He descended the rickety stairs, his lantern held high. The cellar was not a room, it was a network of roots. The massive ancient roots of the cypress trees from the clearing had penetrated the earth, crisscrossing the space. They were thick as a man's torso, and they were all wet. They were slick with the same black oily residue as the lagoon, and in the center of the room Elias saw the true source of Duval's power. It was not the model upstairs. It was a taproot, a massive pulsating trunk of vegetation that descended from the ceiling, presumably from the clearing above, and plunged deep into the earth. It was glowing with the same sick green light as the mist. Attached to this central root, like grotesque fruit, were the real anchors. They were not tiny dolls. They were large, twisted effigies of cypress and Spanish moss, each one bound tightly with wire. And in each one, Elias saw a personal object, a trapper's knife, Jean-Paul, a silver locket, Madame Benoit, and in a third, a single bright blue ribbon. "Elodie," he whispered. "He lied," a voice said from the stairs. Elias spun. It was not Tissot. It was Maman Cecile. She was holding a lit torch and a machete. "Cecile, what are you doing?" "The model was a decoy," she said, her eyes fixed on the pulsating taproot. "For one such as you, dis is the heart. He does not just give the burdens to the swamp. He feeds them to dis thing." "Stop!" Duval's voice boomed from the stairwell. He was there, his white vestments stained with mud, his face a mask of pure fury. Tissot and the other friars were behind him. "You have meddled with things you do not understand, old woman," Duval hissed. "And you, reporter, you have broken the peace. Now, you will restore it." He lunged for Elias. Duval was fast. He grabbed Elias by the throat, his strength supernatural, and slammed him against the wall of roots. The reporter's lantern clattered to the floor, but did not go out. "This is not a church," Duval snarled, his face inches from Elias's. The man's breath was cold, smelling of the swamp. "This is an exchange, a perfect balanced system. They were wretched, they were poor, sick, and afraid. I took their wretchedness, and in return, this ancient sentience granted me order. I hold the swamp back. I keep the ground firm. I am the only thing standing between this parish and the abyss." You fed them to it," Elias choked out. "I fed their pain to it."
Duval corrected him. "A small price. Look." He gestured to the effigy with the blue ribbon. "Elodie, she was full of chaos, reckless emotion. I took it. I gave it to the deep root. And now she is at peace. She is quiet." "She is gone!" Cécile screamed. She rushed forward, not at Duval, but at the effigies. Tissot moved to intercept her. "No!" Elias shouted. He grabbed the fallen lantern and smashed it against the base of the main taproot. The oil and flame exploded. The effect was not what he expected. The root didn't burn. It recoiled. A soundless shriek echoed through the cellar, a psychic blast of pure agony. The green light flared and the root contracted, tightening its grip on the effigies. Duval dropped Elias, clutching his own head, screaming in unison with the root. They were connected. The pain was shared. Maman Cécile didn't hesitate. While Tissot and the frere were frozen, caught between Duval's agony and the roots, she raised her machete. "This is for my girl," she whispered. She swung the blade, not at the main root, but at the wire-bound effigy of Elodie. She hacked at it, severing the connection. The moment the machete cut through the blue ribbon, several things happened at once. In the clearing above, a young woman named Elodie, who had been sitting catatonic in a chair for 6 months, gasped, taking her first true breath. Her eyes flooded with light, with terror, with life. In the cellar, the taproot convulsed. The green light around it turned a dark, angry purple. A fissure of energy shot up the root and struck Father Duval. He was thrown backward, as if by a cannon, into the far wall. The link was broken, but the balance was too. "What have you done?" Duval whispered, crawling, his power visibly draining from him. His face, once vibrant, was suddenly ashen, sagging. He looked his 46 years, and then some. "It is angry. You broke the bargain." Elias looked at the taproot. It was pulsing violently, searching, demanding. It had been cleansing the parish for 5 years, and in return, it was holding the swamp back. Now, the payments had stopped. Tissot, Jean-Paul, and the other frères suddenly cried out, but it was not a cry of anger. It was a cry of return. My fear," Tissot whispered, looking at his own hands in horror. I'm afraid. I'm so afraid." He collapsed, weeping, the terror of 5 years flooding back into his empty vessel. Jean-Paul fell to his knees, a terrible rattling cough seizing his body as the cleansed ailment rushed back into his lungs. All over the parish, the cured were waking up. Madame Benoit's placid smile vanished, replaced by a fresh, agonizing wail of grief. The system was reversing. All the pain, all the sickness, all the sorrow that Duval had harvested and fed to the root was being returned to its owners. "Cécile, we have to go," Elias yelled, grabbing her arm. The cellar was beginning to shake. The earth itself was groaning. "He must pay," Cécile spat, raising her machete toward the cowering priest. "He will," Elias shouted, pulling her toward the stairs. "The bargain is broken. The swamp was promised a payment. It was promised his soul." As if summoned by his words, the taproot lashed out. It was no longer a root. It was a dark, liquid tendril. It wrapped around Duval's ankle. "No!" the priest shrieked. "No! I am your servant! I am your voice! Take them!" But the root was not listening. It had been fed doubt, fear, and sickness for years. But now it had the harvester himself. The tendrils multiplied, wrapping around his legs, his waist. "Help me," he begged Elias. "I am a man of God. Help me." "God has no place here, Father," Elias said, pulling Cécile up the stairs. "You made sure of that." They burst out of the presbytery just as the ground beneath the church gave a tremendous lurch. The Fête de la Nuit had become a scene of pandemonium. The parishioners were screaming, weeping, coughing, a chorus of resumed suffering. The green mist was gone, replaced by a thick, dark fog rolling in from the bayou and the lagoon. The black water of the lagoon was rising. "The church!" someone screamed. The great wooden church, which had stood firm for 5 years, suddenly groaned. The foundation, no longer supported by Duval's bargain, gave way. The steeple tilted, and the entire structure began to sink into the mud it had defied for so long. It was not a slow sinking. It was a hungry, rapid pulling. "The swamp," Maman Cécile yelled. "It is taking back its land." The presbytery behind them collapsed, folding in on itself as the cellar flooded and the roots pulled it under. Elias and Cécile ran, slogging through the mud, which was now ankle-deep and rising. The parishioners were scattering, trying to get to their skiffs, to their sinking shacks. Elias saw Tissot, the man of no fear, paralyzed, weeping in the mud as the water rose around him. He saw Jean-Paul, leaning against a tree, his lungs failing him. The miracles had been revoked, and the price was being paid in full. "Bastien!" Elias yelled, praying the guide had heard the commotion. "Bastien!" He and Cécile reached the edge of the parish, the water now at their waists. They looked back. Paroisse Saint-Brome was being erased. The earth was swallowing the church, the shacks, the general store, and then they saw him, Father Abel Duval. He had been dragged from the cellar. He was in the center of the lagoon where the church had been. He was held aloft by a vortex of black water, mud, and writhing cypress roots. The entity he had served, the ancient sentience of the swamp, was claiming its due. He was no longer a man. He was a sacrifice. He saw Elias. His face was a mask of terror and disbelief. He had been too evil for God, and now he was not evil enough for the thing he had worshipped. He was just food. He opened his mouth to scream, but only mud and black water poured in. The vortex pulled him under. He vanished. The water stilled. The ground stopped shaking. The Paroisse Saint-Brome was gone. A skiff bumped against the shore. It was Bastien. "I heard the sound," he said, his face pale. It was the sound of a debt being paid. Elias pulled Cécile into the boat. They didn't look back. They pulled away, into the dark maze of the bayou, leaving the empty, silent lagoon behind. Elias Thorne returned to New York a different man. His linen suits were ruined. His skepticism was shattered. He was quiet, and his colleagues noted that he startled at sudden noises. He wrote his story. He wrote all of it. He wrote about Duval, the frere, the cured parishioners, the model in the presbytery, and the pulsating taproot in the cellar. He wrote about the doctrine of exchange and the final terrible reclaiming of the parish. He titled it The Miracle and the Malice, a report on the end of Saint-Brome. Mr. Abernathy read it, his cigar going out. He read it again. Then he put it in his desk drawer. "Thorne," he said, not unkindly, "you've been through an ordeal. The heat, the fumes from the swamp, it can play tricks on the mind." "It wasn't a trick, Abernathy. It was real. I saw it. You saw a charismatic priest, a cult leader, who built his church on unstable ground. A flash flood, perhaps, or a localized quake. The rest, the root, the exchange. This is fantasy, Elias. The Herald prints facts. If I print this, we'll be the laughingstock of New York. People will say you've been reading too much, Mr. Poe." But the people were victims of a terrible natural disaster, compounded by their own isolation and fervor. Abernathy finished. "Take 2 weeks off, Thorne, on full pay. When you come back, I have a solid assignment for you. Fraudulent bonds on Wall Street. Something you can prove." Elias looked at his editor. He saw the same wall he had seen in the parishioners, the same wall he had seen in Duval's eyes. The burden of doubt, the refusal to see. He knew he could not breach it. His story was never printed. The Herald ran a small 2-inch column on the back page a week later, sourced from the New Orleans paper. It stated that the remote settlement of Saint-Brome, known for its reclusive populace, had been lost to the swamp after a subsidence event. There were no known survivors. The name Abel Duval was never mentioned. History is not just what is written down, it is also what is deliberately forgotten. Father Abel Duval, age 46, was too evil, too strange, too inconvenient for the books. He didn't fit the neat columns of good and evil, of fact and fiction. He was a man who had blurred the line, who had made a bargain with the earth itself, and had lost. Elias Thorne never returned to the South. He became a successful, if grim, financial reporter, but he never forgot. He kept his unpublished manuscript locked in his desk. Maman Cécile returned to her shack which, being separate from the parish and protected by her own, older magic,
had been untouched. She lived out her days tending to Elodie, who had her life back, but never her full joy. The cleansing had left a permanent scar, and the swamp, the lagoon where Saint Broom once stood, remains a dark, still oily place. Trappers and fishermen avoid it. They say the ground there is unstable. They say that on hot, breathless nights, when the mist is low, you can still hear the tolling of a bell, its sound muffled by 1,000 tons of mud. They say the swamp is waiting. Duval's evil was not one of grand, historical malice. It was a creeping, personal evil. The evil of a man who saw pain and, instead of healing it, weaponized it. He stole the very essence of his flock, feeding their humanity to the darkness in exchange for a little patch of dry land. He was erased from the ledgers, and his church was erased from the earth. But out there, in the deep, humid heart of the Louisiana wetlands, the bargain he struck and the price he paid is remembered. The swamp always remembers.